A wise man ought to be the keeper of his own joy. Diogenes of Sinope once embodied this truth with an intensity few dare to imitate. You were brought up to believe that a real man must suffer for love, that he must conquer a woman's affection in order to affirm his masculinity, that yearning is noble and chasing is proof of emotional depth. But no one ever told you that this chase, the entire drama of pursuit, was crafted to fracture you. They sold you a fairy tale, and you paid for it with your time, your dignity, and pieces of your soul you may never fully reclaim. Diogenes of Sinope, the philosopher who roamed barefoot through the refuse of Athens, who chose to sleep in a discarded barrel and carried a lit lantern in daylight while declaring that he searched for an honest man. He saw the world through unfiltered eyes. While other thinkers composed tomes on morality and the cosmos, Diogenes mocked their conventions. He pointed his scorn at those shackled by longing, imprisoned by their appetites. A man of wisdom, he said, should be capable of containing his contentment within. And yet you placed your happiness in her smile, in her glances, in the warmth of her fleeting approval. In doing so, you surrendered your autonomy. You handed over the keys to your identity. You pursue women not out of genuine affection, but to fill a chasm inside yourself. You believe you're moving toward intimacy, but in truth, you're running away from your own solitude, your unresolved doubts, your unacknowledged fears. Diogenes would have chuckled at this. In fact, he did. Upon seeing a young man blush in front of a beautiful woman, he once exclaimed, "Do not be embarrassed. The blame is not yours, but nature's, for making such creatures irresistible to the gullible." What you romanticize as noble yearning, he considered laughable frailty. What you think makes you gallant, he saw as insecurity, perfumed and disguised. Diogenes urinated in the streets. He pleasured himself in the town square. When shocked onlookers questioned him, he replied, "If only rubbing my belly would also satisfy hunger." He didn't do these things for vulgarity's sake. He did them to unveil your discomfort, to show how shame had become a leash around your masculinity. You conceal your urges, not because you've transcended them, but because you want to seem acceptable to the very women you believe will complete you. You perform chivalry not from virtue, but from strategy. You wear politeness like a costume, thinking it might win you a ticket to intimacy. Diogenes burned masks. You collect them. You build altars to idealized women. He shattered them with laughter. You scan every room for someone attractive. He scanned for fools, and more often than not, found them wearing suits, speaking smoothly, trying desperately to be noticed. He once discarded his cup after seeing a boy drink from his cupped hands. He stripped his life to the barest essentials. And you embellish your prison, decorate your dependents, polish the bars and call them devotion. Diogenes didn't despise women. He despised illusions. And the most corrosive illusion a man can believe is that a woman's love will rescue him. He said, "The one who has the least is often the most fulfilled." But you're insatiable. You swipe endlessly. You wait for a reply like it's an antidote. You linger in rooms haunted by the memories of women who never truly loved you, or worse, those who once did, until you offered them everything and they lost interest. You were taught to chase, to earn affection through sacrifice. But Diogenes never chased. He remained still and let truth embarrass the world. When Alexander the Great, master of empires, approached Diogenes sunbathing and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" the philosopher didn't bow. He didn't praise or flatter. He simply responded, "Step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." That is power. That is self-mastery. That is the man who does not beg. That is what Diogenes yearned for, not luxury, not status, not applause, but liberation. He stripped away the societal masks men wear to win validation, tore down the performances masquerading as sincerity, and exposed the hunger underneath as nothing more than fear. A fear of being unwanted, a fear of being alone with oneself. You were told that a man must win affection to prove he is enough, that you must adjust, refine, chase, perform, to be loved. But has anyone ever taught you to be still? To sit in your own presence and not feel lacking? They taught you how to attract, but not how to exist. And in your pursuit of women, you have neglected the one relationship that matters most, the one you have with yourself. Diogenes did not shun intimacy. He shunned dependency. He believed that no man should kneel to affection like it is a throne. He laughed at those who believed a woman's affection is a prize, because what kind of man treats his dignity as a bargaining chip? And you who waits by your phone like a sentinel guarding a message that may never come, you who reshapes your thoughts, your words, your essence, just to align with her preference. You call it care. Diogenes would call it cowardice, not because feeling is weakness, but because surrendering yourself in exchange for being seen is. You decorate your cage. You don't even realize it's a prison. You believe yourself empowered by access to more options, more faces, more matches. But what good are choices when your self-worth still hinges on being chosen? Freedom, Diogenes taught, is not in abundance, it is in sufficiency. He has the most who is satisfied with the least, he said. Not because poverty is holy, but because the man who needs little cannot be owned. And how many of your choices are born from true desire, not from fear, not from the ache to matter to someone, not from the need to feel visible through her eyes. Let's stop pretending this is love. Let's be honest. Much of what you offer isn't generosity, it's an unspoken plea. Tell me I'm enough. You dress it in gifts, in effort, in poetry. But beneath it all is a negotiation, a quiet trade of your worth for a moment of approval. And when she grows distant, when her attention fades, when her texts grow short, when her tone shifts, you unravel. Not because of who she is, but because of what she represented, a mirror. And without that mirror, you feel erased. But Diogenes, he didn't seek mirrors. He faced the world unfiltered, unflinching. He dared to live without illusion. He chose authenticity over affection, truth over comfort, solitude over submission. He once said the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. And yet look at how young men today are taught to seek validation through seduction, to mistake longing for love, to interpret emotional dependency as romance. This script is not manhood. It is a performance. It is spiritual erosion disguised as passion. So I ask you, truly, sincerely, when will you choose reality over fantasy? When will you stop chasing what you were never meant to worship? When will you stop measuring your worth by her gaze? Because here's the truth. She cannot complete you. No one can. And any affection offered to a fractured self becomes a bandage, not a bond. You've confused connection with consumption, believing if you're devoured enough, adored enough, desired enough, you might finally feel real. Seen. But Diogenes had no need for adoration. He was already whole. And that is what frightened people. Not his ragged cloak, not his cynicism, but his immunity to shame. He could not be humiliated because he did not outsource his dignity. He didn't build himself from borrowed approval. He built himself from truth, from refusal, from knowing the difference between being loved and being owned. And look at you now, terrified of being alone. Not because solitude is unbearable, but because in silence your performance ends. And what remains terrifies you. The hunger, the emptiness, the question, who am I when no one is watching? That is the exile you fear, not from others, but from yourself. But hear me, a man cannot be exiled from himself unless he was never home to begin with. Diogenes was at home in his skin. He did not seek exile from society to hide. He walked away because it could offer him nothing he did not already possess. He owned his life fully, and that made him untouchable. You, however, have traded your sovereignty for crumbs of attention. You disguise desperation as devotion. You chase, flatter, adapt, until you are a collage of projections, no longer a person, but a collection of strategies. Diogenes would look at you and weep, or laugh, because while you curate your existence for appeal, he drank from his hands and slept beneath the stars. He was richer than kings because he owned himself. He desired so little, and because of that he could not be manipulated. There is no leverage against a man who needs nothing from you. That is freedom, not arrogance, not detachment, but the quiet power of self-sufficiency, of knowing you are not waiting to be completed because you were never broken. You think this is about women. It's not. It never was. It's about you. The man behind the mask. The man you've been avoiding by drowning in noise, in lust, in longing. The man Diogenes tried to awaken in all of us. So wake up, because no amount of seduction will save you from yourself. Only self-reclamation can. And the sooner you stop asking, how can I be loved, and begin asking, how can I be free, the sooner you will stop crawling for affection and start walking like a man. You want to be free? Then die, not in flesh, but in ego. Let the version of you that begged, that performed, that flinched at rejection, let him perish. Mourn him if you must, but do not resurrect him, because that man was never you. He was a response, a reflex, a carefully engineered shape sculpted by absence. He was born from rejection, raised on craving, and survived by pretending. Diogenes died before he ever died. That's why he feared nothing. He'd already buried the part of himself that needed your applause. And in its place stood a man so full of reality the unreal had to avert its gaze. You still live in the shadow of mirrors, reflected, refracted, distorted by the eyes of others. You think you're looking at the world, but you're only ever looking for yourself in it. No wonder you're lost. You wander through women like they're maps, hoping one of them will finally point you home. But how can she lead you there when you don't even know where there is? She is not your compass, and she should not be your cage. Because here's the cruel irony. The more you grasp at her, the less you have of yourself. You think love is about merging. It's not. Love is not dissolution. It's recognition of self, of other, of the sacred space between. But there can be no recognition if you haven't first met yourself. Truly. Without scripts, without masks, without rehearsing your worth. You keep asking, what does she want, and how can I be what she desires? Fool. The question is, what do you want, and who are you when no one is watching? And if you don't know, then no woman can love you. Only your disguise. Diogenes knew who he was. That's why when Alexander the Great offered him anything in the world, he replied, "Step aside, you're blocking my sun." That is not defiance. That is clarity. That is a man so complete, not even power tempted him. So free, not even a king could offer him more than he already possessed. You want that freedom? Then step aside from yourself. Get out of your own way. Because all this time you thought the prison was her rejection, her absence, her coldness. But the bars were built by your own hands. From need, from fantasy, from forgetting that you were never meant to chase love like a starving dog. You were meant to embody it. Not the romantic kind, not the storybook kind. The kind of love that arises when a man lives in truth, walks in silence, and holds his ground, unmoved even when the world spins madly around him. That is the man she won't forget. Not because he begged to be remembered, but because he stood like a mountain. Be the mountain. Not for her, not for anyone watching, but because anything less is an insult to the soul you were given. You were not put here to be agreeable. You were not born to contort yourself into shapes that make others comfortable. Your purpose is not to be understood, it is to be true. And truth costs. It will cost you your illusions, your softness, your dependency. It will strip you of the need to be liked, the hunger to be chosen, the fear of being alone. It will crucify the boy in you who still thinks love must be earned. And when you are emptied of all that, then you are finally ready to stand. Not on performance, not on charm, not on borrowed confidence, but on something unshakable, something ancient, something that does not rise and fall with the tides of her attention. You think this is about women? It's not. It never was. This is about your soul. This is about reclaiming the authority you outsourced the moment you decided someone else's gaze could define your worth. You are not a product. You are not a pitch. You are not a project. You are a man. And a man who remembers this walks differently. He speaks less, feels more. And when he loves, it's not from emptiness, it's from overflow, from abundance, from wholeness. He doesn't need her. And that's exactly why she can trust him. Because there is no fear in his eyes. No begging in his presence. No threat beneath his silence. Just stillness. Just presence. Just a man who has gone to war with himself and returned. Not polished, not perfect, but real. And in this world of plastic saints and digital gods, there's nothing more terrifying and nothing more beautiful than that. So stop asking how to make her want you, and start becoming the kind of man who doesn't care. Not because he's cold, but because he's finally warm enough on his own. You bend your truth to appear acceptable. But acceptable to who? You're not lying to her. You're lying to yourself. They once asked him what he thought was the most beautiful thing in the world. He answered without hesitation, freedom of speech. And yet here you are, silencing yourself, biting your tongue, diluting your thoughts, softening your truth. Why? Because you think if you really speak, she'll leave. That's not love, that's captivity. You fear her walking away. You fear the silence. You fear rejection. But Diogenes feared nothing, because he owned nothing, not even the illusion that someone else could define his worth. You, on the other hand, you've built your identity like a sculpture, crafted from borrowed parts. A little charm from him, a little vulnerability from there, a quote from a movie, a gesture from some man who once held her gaze. But here's the truth no one wants to say. If she didn't want you in your silence, she doesn't deserve you in your song. You've made your life a performance, a stage, and for what? A fleeting glance? A maybe? A promise that shifts with her mood? She doesn't even know what she wants, and yet you've made her the judge, the jury, and the executioner of your masculinity. Diogenes would have pissed on that altar. He knew what was eternal, that the man who doesn't chase isn't alone, he is sovereign, that the man who walks away isn't rejected, he is choosing, that being unseen by her is not a curse, it's a test. Will you see yourself now that she won't? You say you miss her, but what you really miss is the permission she gave you to feel worthy. You miss the mirror, not the woman, because if you truly loved her, you'd love her even in her absence. And if you truly loved yourself, you'd never need her to reflect that back. She is not your beginning, and she must not be your end. The beginning is this: the moment you stop running, the moment you sit, like Diogenes, in the sun and say, I have nothing, I need nothing, I am enough. Not in arrogance, not in bitterness, but in liberation. Let her choose. Let her go. Let her love someone else. That is not your death. That is your unveiling. The shedding of the false man who thought he had to earn everything through pain. The death of the boy who believed love was something won by sacrifice. Diogenes didn't sacrifice. He simply refused to kneel. And that, my brother, is the lesson. Do not kneel. Not for beauty, not for belonging, not for the myth of completion. Stand. Stand in your hunger. Stand in your solitude. Stand in the unbearable clarity of knowing this. No woman, no matter how soft her voice, how warm her touch, how deep her gaze, will ever complete a man who has not faced himself. She can walk beside you, she can love you, but she cannot rescue you. That is your burden and your freedom. So burn the script, kill the chase, abandon the altar, let her go, because when you finally stop chasing, you'll see the truth. You weren't chasing her. You were chasing the version of yourself who never needed to chase at all. And that man? He's still there, waiting. So now I ask you, who are you performing for? Who have you made the gatekeeper of your worth? And more importantly, when will you stop chasing and start remembering who you were before the world told you to kneel? If this spoke to something real in you, share it, speak on it, pass it to a brother who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me, what are you walking away from today? Because this isn't just a message, it's a mirror. And it's time we all started looking in it without flinching. Thank you for listening.